Hi, enjoy listening. Emily Carson was 5 the day her world lost its softness. It had been an ordinary morning. Sunlight filtering through the lace curtains. The sound of bacon crackling on the stove. Her mother humming some old Patsy Cline song. Emily sat cross-legged on the kitchen floor, flipping through a picture book, while her mum, Laura, packed a small tote bag and grabbed her car keys. She bent down, kissed Emily on the forehead, and said, "Be back by lunchtime, baby girl." She never came back. At first, Emily didn't understand. A child's sense of time is elastic. An hour can stretch forever. A day feels like a week. But as the afternoon wore on, and her daddy's voice grew tenser with every call he made, the walls of their little home in Ashford, North Carolina, seemed to close in tighter. By sundown, the sheriff had stopped by. Emily remembered the flashing lights, her dad pacing the porch barefoot, and the quiet conversations that always stopped when she came into the room. Her mother had vanished without a trace. There were no signs of an accident, no witnesses, no credit card activity. Just an abandoned grocery list and a tank of gas that went unaccounted for. Raymond Carson searched tirelessly, calling friends, driving rural roads, knocking on doors. He even went to the police in the next county over, convinced someone might have seen something. But weeks passed, then months, and soon the town stopped talking about it. Only Raymond and Emily kept hoping. Emily kept that hope in a photograph, tucked inside an old green album on the coffee table. It showed Laura in a blue sundress, standing barefoot in the backyard, holding baby Emily high in the air. Her smile was soft and full of life. Emily studied that photo often, trying to remember the sound of her laugh, the warmth of her embrace, the way her fingers tucked behind her ears. But memories fade. Even the clearest pictures blur around the edges. Raymond tried his best to raise her right. He worked 6 days a week at the Ashford Auto Garage, coming home with grease on his collar and tiredness in his bones. But he never missed dinner with Emily, never forgot her school recitals or her birthday. He made pancakes on Sundays and let her paint his nails on rainy afternoons. The town called him one of the good ones. But Emily could see the sadness in his eyes, the way he still looked toward the door when it opened, just in case. For years, her classmates teased her. "Your mama ran off." By age 7, Emily was making scrambled eggs. At 8, she could fix the pilot light on the heater. By 9, she had memorized the grocery list and helped plant tomatoes out back in the spring. Raymond, always proud, called her his little lady of the house. She wore the title like armor. Still, some nights, she'd curl up on the worn-out couch, clutching the photo album to her chest, and whisper to the walls, "Where did you go, Mama? Why didn't you come back?" The walls never answered, but Emily learned not to ask. She simply grew. By the time Emily turned 10, she had the eyes of someone twice her age. They were soft, grey-blue, like her father's, but carried a weight they shouldn't have. While other girls her age giggled about cartoons and sleepovers, Emily was already thinking in schedules. What needed cleaning, what needed cooking, and when her dad's shift would end. Their small rental house on Cedar Lane never had much, but it had routine. And that was enough. Emily took pride in it, sweeping the porch every Saturday, keeping the fridge organised, and always setting the table just the way her dad liked it. Napkin on the left, fork on top, glass of water filled to the ridge. These tiny acts became her way of giving back to the man who gave up everything for her. Raymond never remarried. He claimed he didn't have the time or energy, but Emily suspected there was more to it. Once she overheard a neighbour, a kind widow named Mrs. Fowler, suggest he sign up for a local singles event at the VFW hall. Raymond only chuckled and said, "I've already had the best. Ain't no one gonna match that." That night, Emily saw him sit at the kitchen table, long after dinner was cleared, just staring at that photo of her mother, thumb brushing gently over the glass. She wanted to ask him questions. Where had she gone? Why? Had he ever gotten close to finding her? But she held them in. They lived in unspoken grief, a kind of silent agreement that some stories were too heavy for words. School was an escape for Emily, but also a reminder of everything she lacked. During family days, she'd sit quietly while classmates brought their mums to class, baking cookies or helping with grafts. Emily's desk was always empty, and though she pretended not to care, the ache stayed with her through recess and into the long ride home. Still, she was a good student. Not the best. She wasn't chasing scholarships or spelling bee trophies, but steady, reliable, present. Her teachers adored her, calling her the calm in the classroom. And if they ever sensed the loneliness in her, by 5th grade, Emily could make a pot roast and balance the checkbook. Her handwriting was neat, her shoes always polished. Her dad bought her a tiny flip phone, just in case, and she'd text him updates while he worked. Home safe. Put dinner in the oven. Studying for math test. He always replied with the same thing. Proud of you, Em. Despite everything, there was love. Deep, bone-set love between father and daughter. It didn't need explanation. It showed in the way Raymond always left the porch light on when she was out, in the way Emily ironed his work shirts, even when he said not to bother. They had each other, and they made it enough. But some nights, lying in bed beneath her quilt, Emily would stare at the ceiling and imagine her mother walking through the front door. What would she say? Would she recognize her own daughter? Would she regret the years missed? Those thoughts curled around her like vines, tight and unyielding. And yet Emily never voiced them. Raymond had taught her to survive, to be strong, to move forward, no matter what. But as the years passed, and Emily grew into a quiet, driven teenager, the missing piece of her life remained, like an echo in a hollow room. She never said it out loud, but a part of her still waited for the sound of a car in the driveway, still hoped to hear that old front door creak open and a soft voice call out, "I'm home." It never came. So Emily kept moving forward. Emily graduated high school without much fanfare. No streamers, no elaborate party. Just a small dinner with Raymond at their favorite barbecue place off Highway 64. He gave her a card with $50 tucked inside, and the only pair of earrings that had ever belonged to her mother. She would have been proud, he said simply, and Emily tried not to cry as she held the tiny silver studs in her palm. College wasn't in the cards, not because Emily lacked the brains, but because she didn't want to put her father under more pressure. Raymond supported her without hesitation. He sold his old motorcycle to help cover tuition and co-signed a lease on a tiny apartment above a hardware store. He made 3 trips in his pickup truck to haul her stuff, 2 of them unnecessary, but she let him do it anyway. "Feels weird," he admitted that night, standing in the doorway of her new place. "Leaving you here. You've always been my shadow." "You're not losing me," she smiled. "I'm just extending the territory." He laughed at that, but when he hugged her goodbye, she felt his shoulders tremble. Emily threw herself into her studies. She wasn't the loudest or flashiest student in her program, but she was the most focused. While others scrolled through their phones between lessons, Emily stayed after class to practice on mannequin hands and foam feet. She watched online tutorials late into the night and asked instructors if she could volunteer at the salon connected to the school. After graduation, she found a small space to rent inside a boutique salon near downtown Raleigh. The building was old but well kept, and the owner, a woman named Cheryl Gaines, admired Emily's work ethic. "You remind me of myself," Cheryl had said, handing her the keys to the back booth. "Quiet, serious, but people trust you. That's gold in this business." Emily named her station the Handcrafted Room, a subtle nod to her roots. She painted the walls a soft green, set out a tray of tiny succulents, and bought a thrifted tea cart to hold her tools. Her first few months were slow but steady. Clients liked her calm demeanor and the way she listened more than she spoke. It turned out people opened up when you were holding their hands. They talked about divorces, children, surgeries, dating apps. One client cried while telling Emily about her mother's Alzheimer's. Another came straight from chemo, saying Emily's appointments were the only time she felt human again. Emily didn't always know what to say, but she learned the power of presence, of silence. Her name started to circulate, By 25, Emily had a fully booked schedule and a wait list stretching 3 weeks out. She never charged more than she had to, but her services became sought after. She'd even done a few bridal parties and was invited once to do nails backstage at a local fashion show. Still, she kept her humility. She never forgot where she came from. Cheryl offered her a partnership in the salon. Emily politely declined, but used the money she'd saved to renovate her booth instead. She replaced the aging floor tile, added a proper massage chair, and installed new lighting. Her father came to see it one weekend and beamed with pride. "You've built all this," he said, turning slowly in a circle, "with your own 2 hands." Emily smiled. "I guess I'm not just the little lady of the house anymore." Raymond chuckled, eyes shining. "You'll always be that to me." She took the compliment and let herself bask in the warmth of it. For years, it had been just the 2 of them, building a life, surviving together, laughing in the quiet way people do when they know each other deeply. She owed so much of her steadiness to him. But there was still a small, hollow space inside her. A part of her that wondered about the woman in the photo, the one with the soft eyes and the smile frozen in time. Emily didn't think about her every day, but sometimes when she closed up the shop late at night, she'd catch herself imagining a knock at the door, or a customer with her same eyes. She never thought that day would actually come, but it would. So it was a grey Wednesday afternoon in early March when the moment came. Emily had just finished a full set for one of her regulars and was wiping down her station, humming faintly to the old Norah Jones song playing overhead. She had a 15-minute break before her next client, just enough time for a granola bar and a quick scroll through her messages. Then came the knock. Soft, almost hesitant. "Come in," she called automatically, not looking up. The door opened, and in walked an older woman, thin-framed, with greying auburn hair tucked under a tan wool hat. She wore a faded pea coat, buttoned all the way up, and carried a small black purse close to her chest. I'm sorry to come without an appointment," the woman said, her voice gentle, apologetic. "I was walking by. I didn't think you'd have an opening." Emily turned, about to kindly turn her away, but something about the woman's eyes made her stop. Pale green, full of something unreadable. Recognition? Sadness? Fear? As if on autopilot, Emily heard herself say, "Actually, I just had a cancellation. You're in luck." The woman's shoulders relaxed slightly. "That would be wonderful. Thank you." Emily motioned toward the chair. "Have a seat. You can put your things on the side table. If you have any rings, it's best to..." She said it the way she always did, gently, out of habit. The woman nodded and slid off a single ring, gold, worn, simple, and hesitated before slipping it into her purse. Emily didn't notice, not at first. She was busy sanitizing her tools, pulling a fresh towel from the drawer. They sat in silence for the first few minutes. The woman didn't chat like most clients did. No small talk about the weather, no complaints about traffic. She simply rested her hands on the towel and watched the motions of Emily's fingers, eyes darting only now and then toward the mirror. Emily didn't mind the quiet. In fact, something about it made her feel oddly calm. It wasn't until the woman stood up to leave that everything changed. She slipped the ring from her purse and slid it back onto her left hand. And that's when Emily saw it, clearly, unmistakably, the gold band with the faintest glint of engraving on the inside. Her heart stopped. It wasn't just any ring. It was identical to her father's wedding ring. Raymond had always told her the story, how he and Laura had saved up for custom bands, each inscribed on the inside. His had her name, hers had his. They were made by a local jeweler, one who'd passed away long ago. Only 2 rings like that had ever existed. And now, this woman, this stranger, was wearing the other one. Emily stood frozen behind her chair, mouth slightly open. The woman smiled politely and thanked her, then reached for the doorknob. "Wait," Emily said, her voice hoarse. The woman paused. Emily's eyes were fixed on the ring. Where did you get that?" The woman looked down at her hand, then up at Emily with a stillness that made the air feel too quiet. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. She started, then stopped. "It's an old ring. Family piece." Emily didn't know what to say. Her thoughts were racing. Her hands were cold. She managed a nod. It just looked familiar. The woman gave her a long, unreadable look, nodded gently, and left without another word. As the door closed, Emily felt the weight of the moment crash down like thunder. She stood there in stunned silence, her chest rising and falling too fast. She tried to convince herself that it wasn't possible, that maybe it was just a coincidence. But deep down, something visceral, something cellular was screaming the truth. She had just met her mother. Emily barely made it through the rest of her workday. Her hands moved through motions, filing, painting, chatting, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. By the time she closed the salon at 6, she was trembling. The moment she stepped out into the cool evening air, she dialed her father. "Hey, sweetheart," Raymond answered, his voice warm as ever. "What's up?" "Dad," she said, breathless, "do you remember the wedding rings, the ones you and Mum had made?" He chuckled softly. "Of course. How could I forget? You used to try mine on all the time when you were little, remember?" "Yeah," she whispered. "Yours had Laura engraved inside. Hers had Raymond, right?" "Right." She paused, standing still on the sidewalk outside the salon, her heart racing. What if What if I told you I saw her ring today? Silence. Then cautious. What do you mean? I had a walk-in today. A woman. She looked familiar somehow. She wasn't chatty, but I noticed her ring when she was leaving. Dad, it was exactly like yours. Same width, same engraving. I only caught a glimpse, but it said Raymond inside. The pause on the other end was long. When he spoke again, his voice was shaken. Emily, that ring was one of a kind. There were only two. I haven't seen hers in over 20 years. Emily swallowed hard. Then how did this woman have it? I don't know, Raymond said, almost in a whisper. They didn't speak again for a few seconds. A strange chill settled into her spine. Describe her, he finally said. She had green eyes, like me, thin face, faint lines around her mouth. She had auburn hair, but it's greying now. She wore a tan wool hat. Her voice was soft, careful. She had a sadness to her. Raymond said nothing. She could hear the creak of him lowering himself into the kitchen chair he always used when deep in thought. Dad, Emily said quietly, was Mum mentally ill? He exhaled slowly, and the sound was heavier than anything she'd ever heard from him. I didn't know what to call it back then, he said finally. She would have these episodes. Panic sometimes. Fear that something terrible was about to happen. She'd cry for no reason, and then she'd get quiet, cold, distant. But the doctors didn't help. Said it was stress, postpartum. I begged her to stay, but one day she just disappeared. He paused, then added, voice cracking, I always hoped she'd come back. Emily sat down on a nearby bench, her eyes stinging. The street was dim now, the wind rustling the trees above her. What if she's been nearby this whole time? She whispered. What if she was scared or didn't know how to come back? Raymond let out a sound between a sigh and a sob. Then I hope to God she finds a way. They didn't talk much more that night. Emily walked home slowly, her thoughts swimming in a strange, overwhelming current. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept seeing the woman's face in her mind. Those pale green eyes. The way her hands trembled ever so slightly as she picked up the ring. The sadness that felt like it had lived in her for decades. Emily knew she needed to find her again. Not just to ask questions, not just to confirm suspicions, but because a door had opened, one she hadn't known existed. And on the other side was everything she never dared to hope for. Emily couldn't focus for days. Every time the door of the salon opened, her heart leapt. But it was never her. The mysterious woman hadn't returned. Emily kept replaying their brief conversation in her mind. The soft-spoken thank you, the fragile expression, the silver of the ring that glinted under the salon light, and those eyes, her eyes. By the fourth day, desperation began to gnaw at her. She decided to try something bold. She printed a small sign and taped it to the glass near the salon's front entrance. To the woman with the tan hat and auburn hair who came in last Thursday. I have something important to tell you. Please come back. Emily. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. Every time someone paused to read it, she peeked around the divider, only to feel disappointed again and again. On the 6th day, a customer named Belinda. I saw that woman, you know, she said while getting her nails done. Emily's heart jumped. You did? Oh, yes. That day after your appointment with her. She was standing across the street by the bus stop, just staring at your shop. She looked like she was about to come back, but then the bus came and she got on. Emily leaned forward. Which route? Belinda thought for a moment. Route 4, heading east. Toward Oak Ridge, I believe. That night, Emily went to the end of that bus line. Oak Ridge wasn't far, just 2 neighborhoods away, but she had never really wandered there. She walked up and down the modest blocks, past old apartment buildings and rows of duplexes. She stopped at local shops and convenience stores, and at the corner bodega, something happened. An elderly man behind the counter looked up as she entered. Help you, miss? Hi, Emily said, hesitating. I'm trying to find someone. A woman. She's got light auburn grey hair, maybe in her 50s. Thin. Wears a tan hat. The man's brow furrowed. Sounds like Martha. Emily's pulse quickened. Martha? He nodded slowly. Lives in the old Whitmore house, just down the street. Alone. Keeps to herself. Comes in for tea and bread twice a week. Do you know her last name? He scratched his chin. Can't recall, but she signs the store register for delivery sometimes. Hold on. He shuffled to a drawer, pulled out a clipboard, flipped through a few pages, and turned it to Emily. Her breath caught in her throat. Martha Lane. Lane was her mother's maiden name. Emily thanked the man and stepped out, her legs trembling beneath her. She stared down the street toward the Whitmore house. It was a faded blue, half the shutters missing, the porch cracked with age. A sliver of warm light spilled from behind one of the curtains. But she couldn't bring herself to walk up the steps. Not yet. Instead, she scribbled a note on the back of a receipt from her purse and folded it carefully. Dear Martha, I think I know who you are. I believe we may be connected in ways that neither of us expected. If you're ready to talk, I'm ready to listen. She placed it gently in the mailbox. Then she walked away, heart pounding louder than the wind in the trees. Emily barely slept. Every time her phone buzzed, even with a spam call, she lunged for it. Every shadow outside the salon made her look up. She checked the mailbox twice a day. Days passed. No reply. She wondered if Martha had even seen the note. Maybe she'd thrown it away. Maybe she thought it was a prank. Maybe she didn't want to open old wounds. By the 4th day, Emily felt like giving up. Then, one quiet morning, as she was restocking hair products, The door chime rang softly. Emily turned, her breath catching in her throat. It was her. Martha stood in the doorway, wearing the same tan hat and beige coat, her hands clenched tightly around a small folded envelope. She looked older than Emily remembered, but also more composed, as if she'd had time to gather something she hadn't had before. Courage. ... I got your note, Martha said softly. Emily nodded, her voice caught in her throat. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either, Martha said, glancing around nervously. Is there somewhere we can talk? Emily led her to the back room where they stored the towels and brake supplies. She offered her a chair. Neither of them sat at first. Then Martha reached into her coat and held out the envelope. Emily took it with shaking fingers. Inside was a photograph. A younger version of her father stood smiling next to a woman who was unmistakably Martha, except younger, brighter. Between them stood a toddler in a blue dress. Emily. Tears blurred her vision. That was the last picture I ever took of us, Martha said, sitting down at last. It was your second birthday. Emily couldn't speak. She sat down across from her, trying to reconcile the aching in her heart with the woman in front of her. I want to understand, she whispered. Martha nodded. That's fair. You deserve that. She took a deep breath. Your father and I loved each other, but our marriage wasn't easy. After you were born, I fell into a deep depression. Postpartum, they called it, though back then, people didn't talk about it much. I started drinking. Slowly, then more. I wasn't safe to be around, for you or for him. Emily's throat tightened. One night, I left. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd get clean and come back, but time passed, and I got worse before I got better. Martha looked up, tears glistening. By the time I did get clean, almost 2 years had gone by. Your father had moved. I didn't know where. I tried to find you, but I had no money, no rights, and I was ashamed. Silence settled between them like fog. I watched you grow up from afar, Martha continued, her voice trembling. I saw you once, on your first day of school, and again when you were in a pageant at the community centre. But I didn't have the right to step in. Your father, he gave you the life I couldn't, a good life. Emily looked down at the photo again. I hated you, she whispered, surprising even herself. For so long I hated the idea of you. And then I saw you, and I couldn't stop thinking about that ring. Martha smiled faintly, the lines around her eyes softening. That ring was my mother's. She gave it to me when I was pregnant with you. I always meant to give it to you on your 18th birthday. I wore it because it felt like a part of someone I didn't know, Emily said. And now I know. They sat in silence again, but this time it didn't feel hollow. It felt full of sorrow, but also of something gentler. Hope. Martha stood slowly. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know the truth. Emily nodded, and I wanted to hear it. Martha turned to leave, then paused at the door. "I'll be at the Whitmore house," she said, "if you ever want to come by." Then she left, and the door swung shut behind her. Emily sat there, holding the photo and the envelope in her hands. The ache in her chest was still there, but now there was something else too. An open door. For a week, Emily didn't visit the Whitmore house. She kept herself busy, cutting hair, cleaning obsessively, walking the dog she was fostering for a friend, anything to keep from thinking too hard. But no matter how hard she tried, her thoughts drifted to Martha, her mother. Those last words, "if you ever want to come by," looped through her mind every night. Then, on a quiet Sunday morning, with the town asleep and the air already thick with summer heat, Emily stood in front of the Whitmore mansion again. Her palms were sweaty, the same gravel crunch under her feet as when she'd first come with her delivery. This time, she wasn't holding a bag of organic soaps, she was holding the photo Martha had given her. Before she could change her mind, Emily rang the bell. It took a moment, then the door opened. A tall housekeeper greeted her with a polite smile. "You must be Emily. She's in the garden." The back garden was breathtaking. A winding stone path cut through blooming roses, lilies, and hydrangeas. Bees buzzed lazily around the lavender bushes. Martha sat under a large oak tree, pruning roses with a pair of worn gloves. She looked up and smiled. Not surprised, not expectant, just calm. "I didn't think you'd come," she said. "I didn't think I would either," Emily admitted. She walked over and sat on the stone bench near the flower bed. "You've always lived here?" "No, I inherited it from my great-aunt 3 years ago. Before that, I was in recovery housing, working retail. I got clean in my 40s. Took time." Emily looked around. "It's beautiful, peaceful." "It helps," Martha said, clipping a rose. For a while, they talked about neutral things. Gardening, the neighborhood, how hot the summer had been. The kinds of things two strangers say when they don't want to scare the moment away. Then Martha set the clippers down and turned to her. "I think about all the things I missed," she said quietly. "First steps, first words, your first heartbreak. I don't expect to be a mother now, but if there's any way I could be someone to you, I'd like that." Emily blinked back tears. "I don't know what I need you to be yet, but I don't want to lose this again." Martha nodded. "That's enough for now." They walked through the garden, past tall sunflowers and a koi pond with lily pads floating gently on the surface. Emily asked questions about her grandmother, about Martha's favourite books, even about what she was like as a child. And Martha answered, slowly, carefully, as if she were afraid too much honesty would make Emily disappear. At the end of the visit, Martha handed Emily a small velvet box. "I was going to wait, but I think you should have it now," she said. Inside was a thin gold bracelet with a tiny charm, a dove in flight. It was my mother's too. She gave it to me when I turned 30 and finally stopped running. Emily touched the charm. It was light, fragile. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, back in her apartment, Emily placed the bracelet next to the ring on her dresser. Two pieces of a story she was finally starting to understand. The local art gallery buzzed with excitement. It wasn't a big event by city standards, but for the town of Willow Creek, the annual Voices of the Valley exhibit drew a full house. Photographers, painters, and sculptors showcased works that captured life in the surrounding countryside, its resilience, its rust, its light. Emily stood near the back wall where her photographs were displayed. One series in particular caught attention: 4 black and white portraits titled Inheritance. The first was of her father, Jacob, sitting on their porch with his worn flannel shirt, hands folded in his lap, eyes full of quiet pride. The second was her childhood home: faded yellow paint, one broken shutter, and her bicycle still leaning against the side. The third, the Whitmore garden, empty but sun-drenched, with a pair of pruning shears resting beside a single rose. And the fourth, an abstract close-up of her mother's hand, holding a ring between 2 fingers. The same ring from the dresser. The ring Martha had given up all those years ago. Emily hadn't explained much to the gallery curator, just said the series was about memory, loss, and return. As people filtered in and out, Martha appeared. She wore a soft grey shawl and simple pearl earrings. She stood in front of the 4th photo, her eyes moist. "You took this the last time we met," she said, her voice quiet. Emily nodded. "I wanted to remember the moment without words." Martha smiled. "I'm proud of you. I always would have been, even if I never got the chance to say it." Just then, Jacob arrived, late as always, his flannel replaced by a button-down shirt. He looked a little uncomfortable among the art crowd. But when he saw Emily, he smiled wide. Martha stepped aside, letting him greet his daughter. "You did good, kid," he said, pulling her into a one-armed hug. Emily glanced at them both, her father, steady and scarred by years of love, her mother, fragile but fighting to belong. There had been no dramatic reunion, no apologies that could rewrite history. But there was something better. There was effort and grace. Before the end of the night, Emily approached the glass display case in the center of the room. Inside, beneath soft white light, sat the original ring, the one her mother had worn before she left. The ring that had survived time, loss, shame, and silence. She turned to the gallery owner. "I want to donate it," she said. "Not sell it, just display it, as a reminder." "A reminder of what?" he asked. Emily looked toward her mother and father, now standing awkwardly near the punch bowl, talking for the first time in over 2 decades. She smiled. That broken things can still come full circle. If you like the story, I would be very happy to have your support. Click the thumbs up. And to not miss new stories, subscribe and click on the bell. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and all the best.